Last Saturday, Indiana football climbed the mountain. Big Ten champions, a 13-10 win over number 1 Ohio State, a statement victory that changed the program. Then last night, history was made again. Fernando Mendoza, the first Heisman Trophy winner in Indiana football history. And the foundation gets stronger. Defensive Coordinator Bryant Haines locked in, the architect of one of the top defenses in the Big Ten and the nation, a Broyles Award finalist. But the work doesn't stop. The transfer portal opens, roster decisions loom, and the future of Indiana football comes into focus. Plus, an exclusive conversation with Dylan Sin. Now the focus turns west. The Rose Bowl. January 1st, Alabama or Oklahoma, Indiana awaits. Hoosier Tailgate Live, and it starts now.
Raiola. And picked off! Up the sideline! Indiana! Asbury! Walking them down! Woo! IU! America! They got a football team now!
Welcome to Hoosier Tailgate Live here on a Monday, I should say a cold Monday evening. I'm the coach Shannon Griffith, and welcome to what should be a good jam-packed hour of good football talk about this Indiana Hoosier football team. What a moment for this Indiana Hoosier football team and its fans. Of course, last Saturday, wrapping up the Big Ten championship 13-10 over the Ohio State Buckeyes, earning the Hoosiers a number 1 seed in the college football playoffs. And the Hoosiers are enjoying a bye this week as we get started in college football bowl week and bowl mania, I guess you could say, capped off by the first round of the college football playoffs coming up this weekend. We'll talk about those games here in a second as well. And again, what has happened and transpired over this season wasn't luck. It was nothing but being hungry and humble, as Curt Cignetti would say. It's about preparation. It's about belief and execution. All the above is what led to this season for this Indiana Hoosier football team. And to say that they have been the media darlings of the country, the nation, over the last 24 to 48 hours would be an understatement. 60 minutes, Heisman Trophy presentation, all the things that go with everything that goes with being a top-tiered program and getting the respect of those those fans of all college football sports, all the different journalists from A to Z, you name it, have recognized what Indiana has done over the last 2 seasons is no joke. It's no flash in the pants. It's no one-hit wonder. It's a team that will have to be dealt with year in, year out, as long as Curt Cignetti is the head of this football program. Saturday night in New York, Fernando Mendoza becomes the first true Heisman Trophy winner for this Indiana Hoosier football program, as well as as university, or as he would like to say, Heisman Mendoza was officially wrapped up on Saturday even in a race that wasn't even close. It was not even close. Pavia was second. Jeremiah Love was third, and Sayin, I believe, came in fourth. All 4 talented, respectable college football players, but Fernando Mendoza capped it off, and what an evening for him to put himself in front of the viewing public and give a very, very good speech about his journey, about being an underrated football player, and those out there that may not see the stars next to their names means nothing with hard work, hope, and determination. Just a phenomenal representative for Indiana University. I'm sure President Witten, Scott Dolson, all those involved were very proud to have a Fernando Mendoza be that speaking voice in front of the nation when you talk about student athletes that represent the university in a first-class manner, which Fernando has done ever since he stepped on the campus there in Bloomington. You know, as a coach for over 3 decades, I can tell you the Heisman Trophy is the pinnacle award given to a player that displays a lot of different things that go into it, but it talks about a quarterback or a running back or whoever it may be. They have that poise, they have that command and trust of their teammates, but also they earn that of those that are voting as well, because that ultimately is what it's chosen by, is what is voted on as well. Another big thing happened as well this past weekend in Bloomington leading up to the Heisman is the fact that Mr. Bryant Haines has locked up another contract extension. Details were not disclosed, but it will keep him in Bloomington for some time, as we can see that he was a priority by Coach Curt Cignetti this past couple weeks when they went into all this. He's been locked up. He's a Broyles Award finalist. That is to be determined. And also, he was voted or received AFCA Defensive Coordinator of the Year, or I believe it's that title. But a lot of accolades continue for this coaching staff as well. And why Bryant has done a great job there, you must also recognize the job that Coach Shanahan has also done with this program. And these awards reflect not just the individual, but the staff, the players, and all those. And it was gracious to see Fernando point this out in his acceptance speech about the players, his teammates, about all of them had a big hand in this awards. And Bryant Haines will be the first thing that he would tell you. It's because of those that are around him, and as well as Coach Cignetti in this respect. But that was a huge news. Well, this program continues to chase moments. They build, stableness within their programs. Tonight we're going to break down some things. We're going to talk a little bit about the transfer portal and the rumors that are occurring right now that you have seen probably pretty prominently involving the quarterback position, what that may entail. Is Indiana looking for a quarterback or not? We'll have to wait and see. We'll also discuss the portal and what needs the Hoosiers may need in all this. And we'll talk about what that may entail, because remember, January 1 is when the portal opens, or right thereafter. Now, Indiana will be involved in a ball game. But behind the scenes right now, you can guarantee that the scouting staff that is in place there has already begun the research, the background checks on potential targets in the portal coming potentially to Indiana. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. We're going to be joined by Dylan Sin from the Journal-Gazette here in a moment. We'll get his take on everything as we continue to break down tonight's episode, as we get involved with everything from A to Z. We're going to talk Heisman Trophy. We're going to talk portal news. We're going to talk portal needs. We're going to talk about Mr. Diego Pavia. We'll leave that to the end, and how I want to end this session tonight about Mr. Pavia. I take nothing against the kid, because the kid is a phenomenal athlete. He has the stats to back it up, and he has the bravado and all that you kind of look in a quarterback, but sometimes that energy gets steered wrong. We'll talk about that here in a second. But remember, tonight, before we bring Dylan in here, remember the Fanatic store is still open. There's still different promotions going on, 60% off, 50% off. It's on a daily basis. We'll talk about that. I'll have the link. I'll pop that in there right now. If you are potentially looking for a gift for your loved ones or championship material, that is there. We'll talk about that as well as other items that you can find on my link tree that is with on my bio page on X as well. Go there, take a look at it. If you like something, by all the means, we appreciate any of those things that you want to get to, as well as provide maybe for yourself or a loved one. It's a great idea. Christmas is around the corner, and I've got a note in my old calendar right now. I still haven't got the wife's gift yet. So when you've been married for 33 years, let me tell you guys, getting a gift for your wife that maybe you haven't even gotten yet is hard to figure out when you've been married this long, because you want to make sure you get something new, not something that you got maybe 10 years ago that's retreaded itself back into the mainstream of the buying public per se. With all that, one thing I do want to clear up, and this is a mistake that I made, and I do apologize outwardly. I did do a video about Stephen Daly. In that video, I did discuss the situation at Michigan with Coach Moore. I called, instead of using his first name correctly, I said Sherwin. That was my mistake. Sharon Moore is the head coach at Michigan. In that whole situation, I do not wish that on anybody. It breaks my heart to see that happen to a program like Michigan, as well as the individuals involved. We are all human beings. We are far beyond perfect. Coach Moore, from what I know of him, has been an upstanding individual when it comes to coaching. Has he done some things outside the scope of things that's got himself in trouble? Absolutely. What he did after he was fired this past week, it involved some other aspects outside of the scope of being a coach. Absolutely do not condone it, and it's in the legal system as it is now. But I do want to apologize because I used his name wrong and incorrectly. That is completely my fault. And I just want to make that correction and make it noted outwardly that I did mispronounce his name, and we'll move forward. We're all human in that respect. Let's go to some comments here. I see a lot of guys coming in, popping in. We've got, hey, Robert, glad to have you here, as well as Michael. Appreciate you guys being here as well. And Jason, again, appreciate you guys coming in and being a part of the Hoosier Tailgate Live tonight and always. And others that are out there, Justin as well. Appreciate you guys a ton, and wish you all a happy holidays as we cruise on through the month of December here on the Tailgate, as we get things rolling and going here in a short minute. But I got to set up a couple things here real quick, because for whatever reason, I'm missing something that I should have in my status here, and unfortunately you guys are going to get to see me add some things here as we get going, because I want to make sure that I get Mr. Sin in here. And it's one of those things, sometimes I get I'm unprepared, and that's not what I mean to be, but it's been a while, and I've been a little crazy here. But I'm going to get Dylan in here in a second, as soon as I can get everything situated here and get my man in here. As you see me setting all this up, take some things off here, and we're going to bring Mr. Sin in here just a second, I think. Let's see if I get him in here. There he is, the one and only Mr. Dylan Sin from the Journal Gazette. Can you hear me correctly, Dylan?
I can. Yeah, we're doing just fine here, and glad to be on.
Well, I was a little unprepared for my guest. I didn't have my scene set up correctly, and I do apologize tonight because of the cold. And I don't know why this is, but it happens all the time. Internet starts acting funny. So I also want to apologize if for some reason we would, pause out or whatever, because it has a tendency to do that in the cold weather. And of course, I've let my internet provider know I wasn't too happy with the amount of money I'm paying, that they can't get their lines insulated well enough that they can take care of this stuff. You wouldn't think it'd be that hard, but again, who am I to criticize in this situation? But again, appreciate you all for being here. Media, appreciate you guys coming in. We're going to have a good time tonight. Again, remember, Monday nights for right now, when we get past this week into the next week after, and we get into theoretical game week for the Hoosiers after they figure out who they're going to play between Alabama and Oklahoma, we'll go back to 2 times a week. Also tonight, not going to have time to show Fernando Mendoza's presser today that took place there on campus. Go to YouTube, go to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, Jim Coyle. He'll have it up and rolling there as well if you want to take a look at it. Look, I saw it today. Most impressive, Dylan. I don't know if you weren't down there, but I'm sure that you've seen it already. Just a well representative of the institution on all fronts. You could talk about Mendoza.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean that's kind of been his MO the whole season, has been he's an incredible representative for basically any organization that he is part of, right? He's an incredible representative and ambassador for Indiana football, and now he's going to be a very good one for the Heisman Trophy kind of brotherhood that they have there. And he talked pretty extensively today about what that brotherhood means to him and what he's been told about what it will mean as he moves forward with his life. I thought a kind of an interesting quote was he was told by someone that it means more as you get older, that as you move further away from your college career, it ends up meaning more to you. And he said he's looking forward to that. He did bring the Heisman with him to Bloomington. It is likely that it will end up in Indiana's trophy case. That's what he had said he wanted, not to take it with him, but to give it to Indiana, because he felt that Indiana was so responsible for the success that he's had. So the Heisman Trophy was in Bloomington today, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's a nice piece of hardware, you would say, in that respect, and we'll circle back to that. But tonight, a couple questions I have, just that we've had a chance to really kind of, from the Big Ten championship game ending through this weekend with the Heisman Trophy. Now our focus is more so on who Indiana will play. Gives you a chance to really sit back and reflect a little bit on this year, and in your mindset, what separates this Indiana team from the past kind of breakthrough teams? Because there has been some, they just haven't sustained over the years that couldn't, what separates this team 2 years versus those in the past that maybe have broken through but not continued on? What do you think is the ingredient that truly separates the two different teams that Indiana's seen kind of rise to the top but not get there, but with this team just kind of keeps going upward?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. I think for this team specifically, it's the line play, right? Like the teams that Indiana has had in the past have been built largely, and not entirely, but largely on skill positions and a transcendent quarterback, right? Like that was what Michael Penix was when he was here in 2019 and 2020. That's part of the reason those teams were so good. Ty Freifogel, Watt Fillier, guys like that. They've had superstar skill position players in the past. They haven't had nearly as many skill position superstar linemen, right? But this year, like the AP All-American team came out today, they have an All-American on both lines. Carter Smith, left tackle, was a second-team All-American, and Tyreek Tucker, defensive tackle, was also All-American.
It's crazy.
That's the type of play. Absolutely. It's the type of play in the trenches they haven't had before. And then you take into account, I think what could separate this breakthrough from previous breakthroughs is you can build on this one a little bit easier, right? Like the Indiana is going to go out in the transfer portal, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it, looking for some players here in this offseason, and they're going to have people who are very interested in playing for a team that just went 13-0 and won the Big Ten, right? Like in the past, when they've been able to break through, the only way to sustain breakthroughs in the past was to build 2, 3, 4 high school classes on top of one another, and suddenly you're able to be a prominent team for years on end. You can build on momentum a lot easier now than you could even 5 years ago. And I think that is what makes you optimistic about the future of Indiana football, that and the willingness to spend on whatever you need to spend money on, including coaching salaries.
you mentioned some of these All-American teams that do come out from different publications and stuff, and sometimes you kind of have to laugh at them because there's a lot of second and third teamers, but not many first teamers from Indiana. But then, like you say today, it comes out. So it's kind of your cup of tea for which publication you want to look at when it comes to that. Interesting. You talk about Tyreek Tucker. There's a name that, again, great year, very, very, a kid that kind of, throughout the year kind of stuck his nose in there, and you kind of nosed him. Hosa Wheeler being another one. Now we lose Stephen Daly. Most freakish accident I've ever seen happen, with him basically jumping up to give high fives. Nothing overly flamboyant, just an innocent thing, and he comes down wrong, and he's done. His career is done for Indiana. His NFL potential career may be in jeopardy because it's about a 9-month window. But the impact of that loss has garnered a lot of already quote unquote naysayers out there about how this loss is going to be so detrimental to Indiana and its up front. And I don't want to say it's not going to be, but they said the same thing when when Wyatt was lost. And that's when Daly came in and proved himself. I think they've got some guys that they've been holding in the background. Now they're going to have to utilize them. We'll see what type of player they are. I'm not going to say they're going to fulfill everything that Daly was, because he was just a freakish athlete. How much of an impact do you think this will have on Indiana going into the playoffs? I think they have the bodies to get it done. They may kick out Landino to an end. They've got some flexibility there. They've got, and I think it's Nduka, pronouncing that name probably wrong as well, who's played some. What's your thoughts on that aspect and the impact losing Daly?
Yeah, well, it's certainly, as you pointed out, I think it's more impactful because you already lost Wyatt, right? Those guys were really, really talented players, and it's going to be hard to replace them. I think kicking out Landino to the edge is certainly a possibility. And Ndukwe is, as you pointed out, Daniel Ndukwe, the sophomore, is certainly a possibility. I do think it's important they still have Mikhail Kamara on the other side. He's been getting pressures the entire season, kind of almost, despite being an All-American last year, almost kind of an unsung hero for this team because his stats aren't nearly where he wants them to be. He's gotten a ton of pressures and hasn't really gotten home very often, but him putting pressure on the quarterback has really opened up lanes for other players, including Wyatt and Daly. So whoever fills in for Stephen Daly in the playoff is going to get that same benefit. And Mikhail Kamara being on the other end of the line of scrimmage from you is certainly a way to make sure you get single coverage, to make sure there are going to be lanes to the quarterback, and that is an edge rusher's best friend, is to have another edge rusher on the other side. So that helps as well. But I mean, Daly and Wyatt are both terrific players.
Yeah.
Losing both of them is a really, really hard thing to overcome without any kind of noticeable drama. I think they'll probably suffer at least a little bit, would be my guess.
I think before the year started, moving Kamara to the field end is where they put him, but that opened him up to having more true double teams, whether it be keeping a tight end in, keeping, that type of stuff. And he did. He got doubled, like you said, which opened up some one-on-one situations within the interior. Not saying they're going to do this, but I think it's got to be a forethought in the minds as they go through this, as getting him in a position where he gets singled up and putting him into the weak side in where he was a year ago provides a more true possible one-on-one matchup and figure out what they do with the field in. Now, not going to say that's going to happen, but I do think that's got to be the forefront of discussion here the next 2 weeks, is how do we solidify this and put our best player, which is Kamara, in a position to have a better impact. And that may be as the weak side in, where he played a year ago and rose to prominence, making all the plays that he did, kind of like what Daly did this year. What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it's certainly possible. And I think if you're going to do it, this would be the time to do it, because you have 2 weeks to prepare for the game, right? Like if you are going to make a personnel change like that, that's a pretty big personnel change. Like, Mikhail Kamara has spent the entire season playing that strong side position. So sending him back to the weak side is something he would have to get acclimated to. But you do again have 2 weeks to do it. So I think that would be that is a potential solution, provided you can find someone that can hold their own at the other spot. And so I do think that is probably under discussion, and I think that is one thing that Bryant Haines has earned the benefit of the doubt here in spades over the last couple of years to figure out, all right, how am I going to replace a really impactful player? And he found ways around Kellen Wyatt. Obviously, Stephen Daly helped with that, but he found ways around that, and now he's going to have to find ways around Stephen Daly. And he, being one of the best defensive coordinators in the country, shutting down two of the better offenses in the country, has earned the benefit of the doubt to figuring that out, and giving him 2 weeks is really, really important to getting that done.
Well, because that was my my thought process, I'm going to call Haines right now, got him on speed dial, and just giving my input of what he should do now that he's making all these millions. Just want to make sure the little man gets a little voice in the equation there. But you're correct. I do think that coaching staff, especially on the defensive side of the ball, has that imaginary aspect to them of how do I move the pieces of the puzzle to give us our best, and they do that quite well. They've done it all well. And leading into Bryant Haines, thoughts on his new contract. The details have not been released yet, but them putting out a new contract after just signing a new one a year ago, it's going to make him, I've heard, potentially the top paid defensive coordinator with at least within the Big Ten. So what's your thoughts there on that aspect of things?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought for a little while now that Bryant Haines is kind of a rising star, that he's going to be a head coach sooner rather than later. So any offseason that you can keep him in the fold as a defensive coordinator is a win for Indiana. He's really, really good at what he does. I think he probably locked up the Broyles Award with that performance against Ohio State. I mean, in 2 games against top 5 opponents this year, Oregon and Ohio State, Indiana has given up 3 touchdowns, right? One of them was a pick six. One of them was a short field after an interception, and the third one was a busted coverage in the secondary. Like it's been really, really impressive when his defense has needed to buckle down this season. They've really come up with some interesting stuff, and they really bothered those Ohio State and Oregon offensive lines, who are really, really good up front. And so he has more than earned being the highest paid defensive coordinator in the country, I think. And Indiana making it a priority to lock him up once again was a very good and savvy move by Curt Cignetti.
No question. And we know my history with Bryant, and proud as you know what about what he's been able to do, and watch him just dismantle some of the top offenses in the country, quite honestly. He's done a heck of a job with that, and that's his talent and nobody else's, and the ability of putting people around him that have the same philosophy. And Coach Cignetti letting him have full control, because that maybe not be the easiest thing to do, especially the youthfulness. See what happens here. Okay, can you hear me now? I think we're back now, because it's crazy. I told you it was going to happen. I got to make sure the guys in the stream are. See, I told you it was going to happen. I got to make sure the guys in the stream are still there, because I hope I didn't lose them. Everybody there. Are you there?
I am. I can hear you just fine. We're doing well.
Okay. Well, we'll keep going. It's recording, I think, at least, because I do see that it's still going. I think it just stopped and came back up. So apologies. But anyway, moving right along as we get in this, and I'll have to do some editing later. But anyway, how aggressive now with this transfer portal? We're seeing some news already out, rumors, innuendo, but how for portal? We're seeing some news already out, rumors, innuendo, but how aggressive do you think Indiana will be in the portal this coming January, because it's only one time?
Yeah, I think they'll be pretty aggressive. I mean, I think you're starting to get to the time in Curt Cignetti's tenure where you can start to see them developing some younger guys and that they brought in from high school, but they still don't have enough guys to make an elite team as of yet, without taking a fair amount of players from the transfer portal. And I think what we saw last offseason was Indiana has shown a real knack for getting extremely, extremely impactful players from the portal that they can kind of plug and play right away. And that was kind of something I was worried about last offseason was, okay, Kurt Signetti brought in a bunch of his own guys from JMU that first offseason, and obviously they were really good, but how is it going to go when he tries to bring in a bunch of guys who he doesn't know quite as well? And it worked out great. I mean, he got Kellen Wyatt, he got Stephen Daly, just to name a couple. He got Roman Hemby, he got a couple of offensive linemen, he got Hosea Wheeler, he got Lewis Moore back, he got Fernando Mendoza, of course. And so he did a really good job of getting guys who are not his own and bringing them in and adding them to this team's culture, which seems to be extremely strong. And so, can you do that again? Obviously, building through the portal is a lot harder than building through high school recruiting, but Indiana doesn't have high school recruiting ramped up to the level of we're going to be in the top 10 every year, which is what Kurt Signetti wants. Mm-hmm. And so, until you do that, you're going to have to add through the portal. I think Indiana will add through the portal this offseason. And I wouldn't be surprised if they get some impactful players, not through star ratings, but just from good talent evaluation. Like most of these guys, other than Mendoza and a little bit Hemby, there were not a ton of, oh, these guys are obvious superstars that we're getting out of the portal, right? Like they were considered good players. I don't know if any of them was considered a surefire superstar, even though several of them turned out to be All-Americans.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because we've already heard the rumors about the young man from North Texas, potentially between Okie State and Indiana. Again, rumors, innuendo, no knowledge of that, as well as the kid at Arizona State as the potential portal addition to Indiana. This will be an interesting dynamic. You've got Alberto that's sitting there for 2 years, waiting in the wings. You can see his ability in some of the games that he did get into. Tyler Cherry, what's his status? He was not on the he was not on the roster this year. I'm expecting him to come back. We'll see what he does, but that will be interesting too at that position. You got to figure wide receiver is going to be a big need. You got to imagine that tight end once again is going to be a need to go with it. So I still think, like you said there, you're going to look for a pretty good swath of potential players. But remember, Indiana's success in the portal has been mostly in the spring, and that's no longer there. That's how they got Daly. That's how they got C.J. West. I mean, Kellen Wyatt was another one that was a spring addition. So it'll be interesting how that dynamic with Indiana this year will be different in the chase of the portal. Let's talk about the biggest news, Fernando Mendoza and the Heisman. And being that it's that first one for Indiana, your impressions of how that all played out wasn't really close in the final tallies as with him, but your impressions of the Heisman, everything that went in it, his representation of the institution, so forth and so on, kind of give your take on the journalistic side of it.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people thought that this was maybe on the upper reaches of what was possible when he signed from Cal last year. Like you looked at the film and it was like, okay, there's a big arm here. There's a guy who is obviously a leader that his team looks up to, that can make all the throws, that seems to be extremely intelligent. And the question was, okay, he's a little bit skittish in the pocket, and playing behind a poor offensive line over there at Cal, can they coach that out of him? And I think that that's what Indiana was able to do this season, was they made him a lot more calm. They gave him a better offensive line and some weapons and said, all right, go win it for us. And a lot of weeks he did just that. Obviously they didn't need him every week, but when the chips were down, he made the biggest throws against Iowa, against Oregon, against Penn State, against Ohio State. When they needed a big throw, he made a big throw. And I think that is what led him to winning this trophy. And again, the ceremony in New York and all of the stuff leading up to it was just another showcase of just how polished and humble that Fernando Mendoza is. Like, he is one of those guys that I'm going to remember covering for a long time, just because I don't remember covering anyone who's that earnest, who is just he's just. It seems like, and maybe there's some other Fernando that we don't know behind the scenes, but I highly doubt it, that he just seems like who he is all the time, is who he is when he talks to us. And it's really fun to watch. It's been a treat to cover him this year. He gives terrific insight, and I'm looking forward to seeing him play in the playoff and then following his career in the NFL, which will be starting very likely in April.
Yeah, I agree. He's probably, more than likely now going to come out. Now, this is going to be, I'm going to say this from my own experience watching him. I don't necessarily think he's ready for the NFL, quite honestly. I think he could use another year in a system like Cignetti and developing under Whitmer and the Mike Shanahan system. I'm not saying that because I want him to come back or anything like that. I think that the improvements he's made has been noticeable based on his tape from Cal. But there are more things that he could get that much better. And I'm not sure sitting behind a veteran NFL play caller or throwing him into the fire in the NFL, I'm not quite sure that is the right avenue either. So it's kind of a tricky situation in that respect. But when you're talking first round draft pick, maybe the number 1 overall, you just can't risk that by staying another year.
It's
Because
really
you got to go and when you got to go. But anyway, in that respect, in that deal, has Indiana now, and with what they've done as a football program under Cignetti, now that they've got Fernando Mendoza as the Heisman Big Ten championship, do you think that's changed the national perception for recruits out there?
I think so, and I think that that's why if Indiana goes into the portal for a quarterback, you mentioned that maybe they won't. Maybe they will just get Alberto. They'll just stick with Alberto and Tyler Cherry, and one of those guys will be the starter next year. But if they go into the portal for a quarterback, they're gonna and pay a competitive price. They are gonna be able to have pretty much their pick. It sounds like of guys. You talked about the kid from North Texas, Mestamaker. You talked about the kid from Arizona State. Brendan Sorsby's in the portal today, former Indiana guy. Dylan Raiola from Nebraska. Yeah. There are going to be guys out there who want to play for Cignetti, who want to play for Chandler Whitmer and Mike Shanahan because they've earned that respect from back not only Mendoza but Curtis Rourke as well, who was right up there in the Heisman Trophy voting. So it is one of those things where they've earned that right to get elite players. I think but that's mostly in the portal. The lag time for high-level high school recruits on earning that respect, I think, is a little bit longer. You're not going to see that effect probably until the 2027 class or maybe even 2028 because you're just starting to you're by the time the 2026 class was being finalized, Mendoza's playing great, but you've already developed relationships with those guys for years in the past, right? So it's a longer lag time for high school recruiting. That's why I think Indiana's going to have to hit the portal hard once again this offseason.
And the other thing with the portal, and this is what I tell people all the time, and Stephen Daly came to Indiana because Curt Cignetti and James Madison had a relationship with him when he was coming out of high school. So there was familiarity there that ended up him being at Indiana. There's going to be kids all over the country that James Madison recruited when Sig was at JMU that are at other institutions but have a relationship that Indiana will be able to rely upon for at least the next couple of years in that respect. The interesting thing about the kid out in North Texas, he's another Mendoza in the fact that he was a 0-star recruit. Yep. He walked on at North Texas and earned the job.
He didn't start in high school.
He didn't start in high school. Yeah. And Eric Morris, the head coach there that is now at Okie State, I don't know what the magic pill was there, but my goodness, for him to do what he did this year, just unbelievable. And we'll see if that transpires into him coming to Indiana. I kind of have to think that Oklahoma State's probably going to be his destination because they'll pay him a lot of money. At least Morris will because of the familiarity there. Anyway, last question here. Get you out of here because I know we've been barking around the different trees and subject areas that I've got down and in my mind. But between Alabama and Oklahoma, who do you think's the better matchup for Indiana?
I think it's Oklahoma. I think that's because I think Alabama is the better football team, despite Oklahoma having won the first time those teams play. I think it was kind of a fluke. Alabama outgained them by almost 200 yards. They moved the ball. They just turned it over several times. Yeah. Oklahoma has really struggled to move the football all season, really.
and I didn't mean to interrupt you, and the quarterback there has announced that he's not playing in the college football playoffs, is what I heard.
Is that right?
Yeah, I heard this. I don't know if it's true.
John Mateer?
Yeah, now listen. This is what happens with the internet and rumor mills out there. I'm like you. I do not believe it for a minute. When I saw that, my jaw hit the ground because you get all these kids opting out, right? And they do it because they're worried about injury. I can't imagine you're going to opt out of the college football playoffs on a national level to not play because you're worried about the draft. When I saw that, I called BS. But I bring it up for the standpoint of this is that world we live in. Verify, because I've been duped into these things as well. So again, that's probably BS. I can't see him doing it, but there was once a report out there that said this and I couldn't believe it. But anyway, I agree. Go ahead with your status on Oklahoma. I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I thought that was a funny component to all this question.
Yeah, not at all. I do think that they have struggled to move the ball most of the year. Their quarterback has been basically the entire offense. They haven't been able to run the ball. Their receivers are okay, not great. And their defense is nasty. Let's be clear about that. They got
a great D.
Very, very good. But it is just one of those things where I think that of the four units in that game, Indiana offense and defense, Oklahoma offense and defense, Indiana might have the two best. As good as Oklahoma's defense is, I think Indiana's is just as good, and the Indiana offense is far better than Oklahoma's offense. So I would give Indiana a significant edge in that game, and I would rather see Oklahoma, but I think Indiana is going to have an edge regardless of who comes out of that game, because I think they're just a more complete team than either of those that they might play, which is a shocking thing to say about Indiana versus Alabama and Oklahoma, but I think in this season it's absolutely true.
Yeah. I see where you're going with that. And I agree with you. I think structurally, Oklahoma is, like you said, I think they're kind of they're like some of the teams in the country this year, really good defense, but not of great offense. You know what I mean? There's been a lot of those teams, good defense, don't want to play them, but offensively they don't necessarily scare you. Alabama, on the other hand, is just a talent issue with how they would match up like an Ohio State, right? I mean, they've got both sides of the ball and things like that. So it'll be an interesting ball game. Alabama is favored in that game by 1.5, but we'll see what happens. But anyway, Dylan, I appreciate you joining with me tonight. I know we kind of maybe went a little longer than I'd hoped to with you, but hey, then again, we get talking and things get happening, and the internet, gives us trouble. Well, what do? You keep going on, but appreciate you coming on tonight, and we'll talk again.
Absolutely. This is great. Thanks for having me on. I'm always happy to do it, and always have a good time with you.
Absolutely. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette up here in the great northeast of Indiana. He covers a lot of things, not just Indiana, Purdue, Notre Dame, and didn't get a chance to get with what he thought about Notre Dame on this respect, but in missing the playoffs. But again, I think he's one of those guys that gives a good insight into Indiana and comparing them to other programs throughout the country, just based upon his ability of who he covers outside of Indiana. He just doesn't cover Indiana, but appreciate him coming on to us tonight. Hey, we're going to step aside real quick, take a quick break. We're going to talk a little bit about the Fanatics store and give you some information on that. All right here on Hoosier Tailgate Live on thehoosier.com. Hoosier fans, listen up. This is the coach, Shannon Griffith. And if you're gearing up for the game day or gearing up for the holidays, the Hoosier Tailgate storefront on Fanatics has everything you need to rep the cream and crimson in style. From official Indiana Hoosiers game day apparel, hoodies, hats, and sideline gear, to tailgating essentials and accessories, this is your one-stop shop for all things Hoosiers. And with the holidays right around the corner, it's the perfect place to grab cold weather gear, stocking stuffers, and IU gifts for the whole family. And here's the kicker. When you shop through the Hoosier Tailgate storefront, you unlock exclusive discounts across Fanatics. More Hoosier swag, better prices, and gear you won't find anywhere else. Ready to load up your cart? The link is easy to find. Just head to my Hoosier Tailgate Twitter page and hit the link in my bio. You can also find it in every YouTube description and all of our Hoosier Tailgate podcast episodes on your favorite platforms. So don't wait. Rep the Hoosiers proudly and save big. Visit the Hoosier Tailgate storefront on Fanatics today, because the best fans in the Big Ten deserve the best gear in the Big Ten. Welcome back here to Hoosier Tailgate Live. I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. Appreciate you being here with us tonight. We just got done talking with Dylan Sin of the Journal-Gazette and wanted to talk about a few things as we get going here tonight as well, but also talking about some of these situations with the bowls coming up this week. Talk a little bit about that. We got a lot of games on tap starting tomorrow night. You got Troy versus Jacksonville State. Then you see the Old Dominion right there against South Florida. That's the new team that Brian Hartline will be the head coach of. Coach Goulash went to Auburn and did a great job there. They're 2.5-point favorites against Old Dominion. Louisiana, a 3-point favorite over Delaware. All these games are on ESPN. Of course, the timing you can see there listed as well. Missouri State at Arkansas State. That should be an interesting matchup. Missouri State's first year at the Group of Five level. Had a great year. Their head coach did a heck of a job there with Missouri State and used to be in the 1AA or FCS level. You played in the conference with Indiana State, as a matter of fact. Kennesaw State, there's another Indiana team that Indiana played this year. They're going to head against Western Michigan on Friday, and then Memphis and North Carolina State will play in the afternoon. So a lot of bowl games upon us this week. It's a great thing, and you got to love that aspect of it. And then, of course, then the college football playoffs will take center stage Friday evening first. Alabama and Oklahoma teeing it up at 8 o'clock, and that'll be a dandy of a ball game. As the Dylan Sen said earlier, Alabama moved the ball up and down the field against them, but Oklahoma's defense made some clutch plays at the right time, and I think they had one was a pick six, and Alabama just kind of stumbled over themselves in that game. That's going to be an interesting rematch to watch on Friday night as well. And then Saturday, the big ones, Miami and Texas A&M. They're a 3.5-point favorite. Texas A&M is Tulane, Ole Miss, and James Madison at Oregon. You can see double digit spreads there, which, again, the Group of Five deserves to be in this respect in the college football playoffs. Again, I think there's going to be a lot of tweaking going on. Don't necessarily think you want to see games that have spreads that are 2 and 3 touchdowns in that respect. But yeah, that I like. Old Dominion had a great year. They just signed their head coach to a new contract. He was actually in line to go to Virginia Tech, I believe, as a possible OC with Franklin, but that didn't work out as they got Franklin got hired at Virginia Tech, and a couple other big hires in the Big Ten. If you have been paying attention at Michigan State, Pat Fitzgerald is back in the saddle. That's a great hire for them. I think his identity will, bode well for Michigan State fans overall. And then I think Penn State slam dunked it with Matt Campbell. I just, if Matt Campbell was still available, he'd be at Michigan, but Penn State was able to lock him in first, and that's a huge one there. So things will be interesting here to see what happens with Michigan and their search. It'll be a interesting dynamic when you come back through it all. But, some really nice hires that happened. But the bowl season is upon us, which is, like I said, a great thing. And we guys like me get very excited about the next 2 weeks because there's ball games either on during the day or in the evening that keep me occupied with everything and all that. But when you look at the other thing to look at here is this, what is the best team for Indiana? And I'll say this right now, when it comes to, looking at matchups and potential, who would you rather play? I guarantee it, Coach Cignetti doesn't care. Whoever wins that game, they'll be prepared for. If it's Alabama, so what? If it's Oklahoma, so what? There's going to be top-tier talented teams that are going to line up against Indiana. Indiana has the biggest bullseye on them because everything that's transpired in the last couple weeks. Mendoza being the Heisman Trophy candidate just draws another aspect to them as being the hunted in this national tournament. And whoever they get, he'll have them ready to play. And I don't necessarily think he will get into the dynamics of who he'd rather play or not play. I just don't think that is something that, A, he's going to come out with, number one. And number two, when you really get down to it, we can speculate who may be the best looking lineup to go against, potentially like Dylan Sin analyzed there. But as a coach, you just don't, you play who's in front of you. And right now they don't have anybody. So they're going to be working on themselves over the next week. And when they get to the point of preparing for the next week of competition, whoever that is, they'll be ready to go as they will study both teams this week. That's the hard part, is you got to end up studying two teams throughout the next week to 10 days. And you spend a lot of time potentially wasted on somebody you may not even play. So it gets a little chaotic in that respect, but he will all be ready and going. As far as the transfer portal, in my opinion, all this, again, we'll just have to wait to see. I do think Indiana will have to go in the portal for certain needs like wide receiver, like tight end. Offensive line, I still think will be a huge avenue for them to look at, as well as defensive line. And you got to think in the secondary as well, because you're going to lose, a pretty good core back there, especially with D'Angelo and Moore being the top two. You're going to have to look to replace guys that have ability to come in and play right away. And hopefully they can find those guys to add to the equation back there. But a January 1 and you're open up for about 30 days, it's a tight window to find those type of bodies quickly and make an impact with them, because it's such a short turnaround in that respect. But again, I just think Indiana, interior line, offense, defense, linebacker, secondary, and then, of course, the wide receiving core as a whole, including the tight ends, will be an area for them to look at, and all from that perspective when they get into it here at the 1st of January when that all comes out. A couple things that did spark my interest this week, as you can imagine here, and we'll talk a little bit about it as we get past this one and go to a couple things that were done by Mr. Pavia. And again, the kid's a gifted athlete. There's no question about that. And the coach that had him at New Mexico State, Jerry Kill, the former Minnesota coach, he was the one that recruited Diego out of junior college into New Mexico State. He, lit it up there, went in the transfer portal, ended up at Vandy, but so did Coach Kill. Now, I know Coach Kill from way back when Coach Kill got his first head coaching job at a Division II school in Michigan, Saginaw Valley State. And I know guys that have worked with Kill, and I guarantee you the display that Diego had outwardly and publicly after the Heisman Trophy would not be anything that Coach Kill, Coach Elk, or anybody at Vanderbilt wanted to see. And this tweet that he made was a big mistake. And I say that from the standpoint of it shows you when somebody is a front runner. And I know he goes to this avenue of being the guy that's always doubted and so forth and so what. Well, guess what? There's a lot of guys like that, including the guy that won the Heisman Trophy. So to talk about, this is your mantra of being slighted or feeling that you're being slighted and stuff, I call BS on that. What I call this is a guy that's a front runner. This is a guy when things doesn't go his particular way that he thinks they should go, his reaction is defensive and not reflective in that respect. And this is his own shortcomings that the NFL has already looked at him and said he's gonna be a risk because of his size and height. Number one. Number two, when you make these outbursts and you show these type of things outwardly, it has a bad reflection on it. The other one I wanted to point out is this guy on Twitter called SEC Numbers Guy. And he's another one that took a shot at Mendoza, and he's taken shots at Indiana throughout the year. All I say to these guys is keep providing the ammo for the chips on the shoulders of the guys in the locker room at Indiana. Because if you've noticed a trend here, it's all SEC people that have this, I guess, jealousy about what Indiana has done, including players, because Pavia actually had another thing out there that actually was a little bit more disturbing about what he had put on a display about Indiana as well. Beyond that tweet that I just put up, these are all SEC guys. These are all guys that have a problem. And this SEC numbers guy, here's what I tell those type of people. I always tell guys like that, liars figure and figures lie, because what he does is cherry pick at things that he's trying to show about Mendoza. He leaves out a lot of things in this tweet that he put out. Fernando played very seldom in the fourth quarter in about 6 games this year. Okay. Which he could have probably threw for 500 against Purdue, 500 against other teams, but no, they didn't play him in the fourth quarter. So he wants to cherry pick about this and that. The thing that Fernando had going for him all along was the fact that he was a guy that was on the team that went 13-0 and won a conference championship. Diego Pavia didn't do that. Didn't do it for 2 years. He never was in the championship game of the SEC. Okay, so these guys provide the chip, the ammunition for those guys in the locker room that are doubted. And I think that's one thing to take with this is this. I say keep talking, just keep talking, because I guarantee you those things are going to be on bulletin boards. They're going to be thrown on video, put on the TVs about what is being said about Indiana. And this just provides another chip to go on their shoulder. If you saw the 60-minute interview on Sunday night, Aiden Fisher talked about it. He talked about the chip on the shoulder. It just keeps getting bigger because the more they do, more people doubt. And the more the people doubt, the more they feel they need to prove. And it provides them the chip on their shoulder. And all these SEC teams and all these SEC people and the Greg Stanky, the SEC commissioner, saying 7 teams need to be in the playoffs because they, this and that. It's just more ammo for this team to put on their shoulder and make that chip a little bit bigger when they head to the Rose Bowl on January 1. What we saw with this Heisman announcement from Pavia was basically unacceptable. Quarterbacks are leaders, faces of the program, representative of their universities. You couldn't get two contrasts of what a leader and a representative of a university should act like in Fernando Mendoza, and the exact opposite of what Vanderbilt stands for in an academic institution than Diego Pavia, because of what he said and how he said it. Those comments were embarrassing and unbecoming of a SEC quarterback and a form of leadership. He showed his true colors. He's a talented young man. I take nothing away from him. I take nothing away from where he's been and how he got there. There's no question about it. But he needs a lesson in humility, because what he did after the Heisman vote showed exactly who he is. And that is somebody that's a front runner. And when things go tough, he folds. Being human is, you're going to make mistakes. Frustration is more a part of everyday life for everybody, not just him. But leadership is revealed in how you handle disappointment. Indiana didn't respond with words. They responded with championships. Every dismissive reaction adds to Indiana's edge and chip on its shoulder. Indiana isn't asking for respect anymore. They're taking it. And what happened Saturday night and what Diego Pavia did was not only an embarrassment to his teammates at Vanderbilt, but to the coaching staff and to the prestigious university that Vanderbilt is. And while I respect the fact that Diego Pavia is planning on playing in the college bowl game for their team, it may be a time for the coaching staff and the administration to step in and say, more than a written apology that he gave on Twitter, maybe it's time they say you're going to sit for X amount of quarters to make a point that the way you handled yourself in the national limelight was not respectable, and it sure does not reflect what we expect from Vanderbilt student athletes. And again, he did come out and say he was wrong, he was frustrated, but in the grand scheme of things, as a quarterback of a Division I SEC member institution like Vanderbilt, he embarrassed the entire SEC as well as Vanderbilt University and his teammates, and he showed his true colors with how he responded after Fernando Mendoza, another Hispanic quarterback, won the Heisman that he thought he should have won. And I hope that he learns a big lesson from this, and it may cost him an opportunity in the NFL when it comes to being a draftable kid or a free agent, because every interview that he does, the first question is going to be about this night and what happened and why he did it. And he will answer those questions for 35 teams if he has to, in terms of how he handled it. Appreciate you joining me here tonight on the Hoosier Tailgate. Again, get out to the Fanatics store as well. And don't forget, you can get out a game ball that is going to be used in the game on the college football game from the big game ball store. I'll put that link in the description as well as the Fanatic link that I left for the store that has all your championship gear as well. We'll catch you again next Monday night as we get ready to prepare for Indiana's first round in the college football playoffs, when they will head to the Rose Bowl to play the winner of Oklahoma, Alabama, January 1st. Until Monday night, I'm the coach Shannon Griffith. This has been the Hoosier Tailgate right here on thehoosier.com. Good night, everybody.